Another edition here of We Talk Fantasy, and as you can hear, we have a special guest joining us. Rex, my son, has decided not to sleep on this taping. Rex, what do you think of this episode so far? Yeah, we just started. Okay, there's Rex. He'll maybe occasionally be a part of this. If you're listening on, if you're listening on audio, it's going to be a little bit easier to deal with. But Chet is here. Kyle Ray is here. Guys, I got to start with this week. Mohawk Honda. Some of you are getting ready for your Thanksgiving trips. How are you getting back to wherever you're going? Hopefully you're riding a ride that you enjoy. If you don't, Mohawk Honda is the spot for you this holiday season. Kelly Blue Book offers going on right now. So if you want to drive off the lot with money in your pocket and a new ride, the place for you is in Glenville, New York at Mohawk Honda. Freeman's Bridge Road. Stop over there. Say what's up to our friend Greg Johnson. He'll help you with the sales going on. Cam McKenna, Lindsay Harridan, John and Service, so many different people. We've had the opportunity to meet them and work with them. Now you can do the same for yourself. You've got maybe some vacation time you saved up. Make it a part of your day when you have time off to stop over to Mohawk Honda and get yourself into a new ride for this holiday season. No better gift. Love my Pilot. Cannot wait to drive it around upstate New York. Even though my wife's probably going to drive because she doesn't like when I drive. Whatever. Yeah, Rex, I know I got you. Mohawk Honda, where they always go out of their way to please you. Now, our pal Ray over there was in attendance for Bills Colts.
Oh,
he was there. I guess we'll start with this rather than the demise of your Bills team. Jonathan Taylor, are we doubling down now? Is he both the fantasy football MVP of this season and potentially the NFL MVP? And I'll let you start.
I had the pleasure of watching that human run and seeing how absolutely massive Jonathan Taylor was. It's funny when you go to games, you always look at who are those players that you're going to watch. And Sunday I was like, ooh, I get to watch Jonathan Taylor go against this Bills defense. And then I was like, oh shit, I watched Jonathan Taylor shit on the Bills defense. That was great. But, I mean, one, he is clearly the fantasy MVP after overtaking Derrick Henry 2 weeks later. I mean, let's not forget that about Derrick Henry and the historic pace he was on from a fantasy football perspective. So got to give credit where credit's due for Henry. But JT has just been unreal. And if I'm not mistaken, all three of us were oh, no, Chet, you were on the JT train?
Well, I wasn't necessarily on the train. I was confused by your guys' anti-train.
I didn't think that they were going to be able to do what they did with JT with that offensive line being completely redone, essentially. That was my biggest concern, but, I mean, he completely destroyed my take. So I also look at it this way, too. How do you not put a vote for him as the league MVP, too? I mean, there's no real quarterback outside of Aaron Rodgers who's really standing out this year. Kyler has had a good year, but he's gotten hurt and he hasn't played in 2 games. Josh Allen's been bad. Patrick Mahomes has not been the Patrick Mahomes and throwing interceptions and all that kind of stuff. So when you look at that, Aaron Rodgers has been the consistent quarterback. And then I think it was Derrick Henry that we were all like, okay, this is going to be the year where Derrick Henry gets his MVP. And now when you look at it, what Jonathan Taylor is doing with that Colts offense, just being the offense. I mean, for God's sakes, he had 158 of the 370 yards. Carson Wentz threw for 100 yards, and they still threw up 41 points. So I don't see how you don't look at Jonathan Taylor as both the fantasy and the league MVP right now.
It's amazing. I just looked up the total points for running backs in half-point PPR.
Not even close.
Derrick Henry's still number 3.
Yep.
And he hasn't played in 3 weeks. Like, Austin Eckler only has 11 more points than Derrick Henry in half-point. And that's half-point PPR. Derrick Henry doesn't catch the ball. That goes to show you just how amazing of a start it was first half for Derrick Henry. But no, I mean, it's funny that, I think we had that maybe last week or 2 weeks ago where Goz posed the question, will Austin Eckler finish as RB1? Taylor goes out and scores 5 touchdowns. Eckler responds with 4 touchdowns. So both those guys have been so great. But no, I think you have to consider it just because that Colts team is literally similar to what Derrick Henry does, is carrying that team and pulling off big wins, keeping them in playoff contention. Carson Wentz has played fine. He's actually been, I think, surprised a lot of us with his bounce-back ability in Indy. But let's be clear, it's because of Jonathan Taylor's success running the ball. Almost at this point, guaranteed 100 rushing yards. Like, NFL teams struggle to rush for 100 yards, especially with the evolution of passing and, pressure from the front office and the fans. Throw the ball. They're going to the old-school system with a workhorse. Like, I think we all kind of thought Nyheim Hines would have a bigger role in this offense, but why would you? With how Jonathan Taylor's been able to run the ball, and it seems like he's cut from the same cloth as Henry, where he was a workhorse in college. Like, he got the ball 25 times on Saturdays. He's getting the ball 25 times on Sunday. Like, some guys are able to sustain that and continue to be explosive. He's one of the rare guys where just keep feeding them the ball and he keeps getting better.
And that's it with the Taylor Scott report. Is going into this preseason, and go back and listen to the past podcast, it might be my worst take in the history of We Talk Fantasy, that he was somebody who just didn't get the touches with Hines and Mack and a new quarterback coming in and Frank Wright letting to throw the football. And you mentioned the offensive line movement. It didn't make sense fantasy-wise to reach on Jonathan Taylor. But that is why fantasy football is the greatest and worst thing that's ever been created for sports fans, of how great of a season he has had. So, yeah, I think he's no doubt the fantasy football MVP, because if you took him between 8 and 12, or depending on how big your league is, 8 and 14, you might be winning your league right now. Like, that was the talk you had in the summer of, okay, who do I take here in this A spot? Do I reach on a quarterback? Do I take a top-tier wide receiver? Do I just go safe and take Taylor? That is the difference potentially if you being a playoff team or not a playoff team, as you did with your first-round pick in Jonathan Taylor. As to the league MVP, yeah, like, why not? Lamar Jackson, if you liked him, he was sick or had to poop or whatever happened this past week. He's got COVID twice. I don't know if he actually got it 3 times. That'd be a record, I believe. So he might not be in the mix for it. You both just mentioned Mahomes. His stats aren't where they used to be, a familiar name in the MVP race. Aaron Rodgers, did the Green Bay defender really drop that football? I would have liked Fox to show some other replays, but Rodgers is always in the mix. But why not Jonathan Taylor for the impact he's had for the Colts so far this season? And that kind of flips it around to this too. Like, Buffalo gets beat down against the Colts. The Titans got destroyed by the Texans. We should have seen a fantasy outburst for the Cowboys and the Chiefs. It didn't happen. What we're watching now in fantasy, and I think I'm going to start with Chet on this one. Do we feel like there's been more blowouts, or is it just the leagues that I've been playing in where you feel like the guys you've relied on to have these monster performances just aren't happening anymore? And these upstart teams, this has been the theme of the NFL. These upsets we don't see coming are destroying the league standings, the playoff scenarios, and fantasy matchups.
Yeah, it's been, I think every week we text each other, I don't know football. Like, I don't understand the gimme games. And, like, you know, you get super excited when you look at your fantasy lineup and you see a lot of green matchups. It doesn't matter anymore. It really doesn't. Like, we've had some of these perfect setup matchups for guys to go off, and you can't rely on anything. And that's what makes football so fun, is it really is any given Sunday where anybody can beat anybody. Your team could go off. Your team could have a dud. I think it was so fun kind of seeing some of those tweets out there of, you know, you fall behind after Jonathan Taylor scores 50 plus, and then Eckler scores 40, and you're able to come back. And I don't know. Every week I just feel like I know less and less about who's good, who's reliable, and that's what makes it all fun.
Yeah, and I think we all were talking about it during the preseason too. It was like, this may be one of those years where you see top-tier teams and just bad teams. There's going to be nobody in the middle. And just like that, everybody feels like a middle team because people are beating people, people aren't scoring, people are throwing up duds. It's just like, what is going on? So yeah, I don't know football.
It's like the Madden curse. It's just like whoever is number 1 in the power ranking, you're going down. Like, you're gonna get beat by the Jets. You're gonna get beat by the I have no idea who the Super Bowl favorite is. Every time I feel like I have it figured out, something happens and I'm like, oh, they're actually not that good.
I mean, for God's sakes, the Cardinals are winning games with Colt McCoy at quarterback. Like, what the hell is going on?
I like all this, by the way, too. And I know I clarified this in an earlier podcast this month, but when you have this in sports, when you have a wide open race for the MVP in the NFL, when you have a wide open race for the Heisman Trophy in college football, when you've got a wide open race for the playoff scenarios in college football, when you've got a wide open race in the NFL, that's what I want as a sports fan and add to fantasy. Again, in comparison to maybe the leagues you're playing in this season, I look at second place all the way down to 11th, depending on if you've got 2 or 3 weeks left to go, if you moved it because of the extended regular season. Nobody's really out in a lot of my leagues. Here's for comparison for the Gozilla Media Fantasy League. Chet is still in first place.
Thank you.
But a guy like Matt Woods is second in points this season, the host of Over the Bar podcast right here on Gozilla Media about the other type of football from across the pond.
Boo! It's a good podcast. So listen. Boo.
He is second in points scored this season. He's in 7th place. That shows like what fantasy football is doing this year and how competitive the leagues are. And I love that because I know some people say, oh, it's a bad race, it's a bad season, it's unpredictable. That's what you want. Like, I know people love David versus Goliath. And I don't know if you guys feel different, but I love the wide open races.
No, I completely agree because if it's already, if someone drafts really well or there's a great trade early on, it's not fun when your fantasy season's already decided by the first month and you just watch a team dismantle everybody. That's not fun because it's already predetermined. When you know that regardless of what the projections say, that it's a level playing field and that upsets are going to happen. Like we had it actually in our dynasty league where a couple of the last place teams pulled off some massive wins that changed the playoff picture. Like it completely changed around the numbers. So that's what I prefer that as well. Even though it can pull your hair out when you are one of those great teams and your projection said you were going to win by 40 and you felt really confident and then your team just put up a dud. That's what happens. And that's what makes it interesting. And it should keep everybody in your league involved.
Yeah, I think then this is one of those years where I'm sitting there in one of my other leagues, I'm sitting there at 4-7, and I still have an outside shot of getting into the playoffs because the best team in the league is 9-2. There's 2 9-2 teams, but then the next best team is only 6-5. So you win games and they drop 2 games. I'm like 4th in points. I'm back in the playoff mix. So
is that an ESPN league?
Yeah, ESPN.
What does the percentage say for you?
Percentage for me says 13%. So I'm still out. I still have an outside chance, but a couple of these guys are going to make the playoffs. Like my entire division has always been a powerhouse. 2 of them are at 92% and plus. One's at 58%. So then when you look at all the other divisions, the next closest one is there's a 91, a 98, and then everything else is under 20%. Yeah. So like I don't care what they say. Like that 6th spot is still 100% open for grabs because there's so many teams that are like, well, we'll throw you a bone. We'll throw you a bone. You have a shot too. So it's kind of crazy. So
it's fun with, I'm doing these 10 leagues that we've talked about throughout this season, which by the way, went 9-1 this week. Humble brag. Although my only loss was my best team because I faced Jonathan Taylor in one league and it was that league and it did not go well, but, playing fantasy football on different platforms for the first time. Like I'm ESPN through and through. It's like having an iPhone. Like I could never learn or I never lean towards getting an Android or like I'm iPhone. Well, that's ESPN for me. So now I'm getting introduced in the Gozilla Media league with Yahoo. And I'm also doing just straight up called the NFL app NFL fantasy app. So I love that they have the percentage for what your playoff probability is. I think that's so fun to try to look at the numbers, like because you could still try to do like the playoff generator in the NFL on ESPN where you kind of do that already where you're like, all right, I'm playing this team and they're in the playoffs. So if I beat them and then they lose, this kind of like makes it a lot simpler of like, all right, I am still mathematically alive in this league. The thing that actually really annoys me about the ESPN format and the other formats don't do this. It's Tuesday. I don't care about my matchup from last week. Let's move on. Don't make me go to my scoreboard and change it to week 12, which is already here, to see where my projections and what my matchup looks like. Yahoo, you click on matchup. It's already showing you week 12. Let's move ahead. Screw these people. If you're too lazy to check your lineups on Monday night or go backwards and check to see if you won, if you didn't stay up on Monday night. Don't make me sit here and look at last week's news. Let's move ahead.
You know what? I need to add to that. It actually is one of the 2 questions in this week's Johnstone Supply and Troy mailbag. Don't forget our proud sponsors at Johnstone Supply and Troy helping you this holiday season. The Goodman furnaces are in stock. If you've got to update your furnace with your relatives, your family, your friends coming over for the holiday season, make sure your air filters are updated. Make sure that air is purified. You don't want to make sure they're getting all that dust and that weird stuff they're breathing in. Maybe they're watching Peppa Pig videos like my son is right now and can hear that in the background. Wonderful. Johnstone Supply in Troy is continuing to help you this holiday season. Give them a call today, 518-272-5922, 518-272-5922, or visit them on 6th Avenue in Troy. Johnstone Supply in Troy helping you this holiday season, whatever it might be, for your friends and family and the great events coming up for the rest of 2021. 518-272-5922. Shout out to Tom, a part of the Gozilla Media Fantasy League. His Titans continue to be a weird case. All right, so you just mentioned the ESPN League. This is a late entry. I saw this on Twitter, so technically it didn't right into the mailbag, but I need to reference this about ESPN. Taylor Lattimore, Our pal over at Sports with the Zenith team mentioned this on social media about ESPN leagues. Dark mode, I believe, started, correct?
Oh, yes.
So let's talk about dark mode for those who don't know. Dark mode, if I'm under the same understanding you are, is that basically your lineups cannot be seen by the other teams. Is this the future of fantasy? What do you guys make of dark mode? Or do you play against any managers who have done dark mode for years?
Whoa, I did not know about this.
No,
So I get
Kyle,
maybe-
you know you're talking about the new font?
maybe I'm wrong about dark mode. I thought dark mode was that you could basically blank out your lineup so that, like, let's say Kyle and Chet were playing each other. I'm going to put my lineup in dark mode. Chet can't see who I'm playing against him. Is that not what ESPN's doing? Maybe I misinterpreted Taylor's tweet.
No, that is dark mode. So now instead of unless that is weird. That's a good point. That can't be about the new ESPN dark mode, because that's what I know dark mode is. It goes from the white background that blinds you to the dark. It's easier on the eyes.
Oh, God. How to get dark mode. Hey, it's all about the brightness.
Wow. I totally misinterpreted his tweet. When I thought dark mode, I thought it was like incognito mode when you search on like Google or something where you can
like
dark out
watching
your
porn?
lineups.
Nah, that's just beautiful.
That's awesome.
Wow.
I got really excited because I would be very intrigued. And
All right, you know what? Even though the font has changed, and Taylor is probably laughing right now saying, I got Goz so bad with that tweet. That idiot thought it was about blanking out lineups. All right, I'll mention one of my guys I play multiple leagues with. His name is shout out Ben Prez. He plays this strategy where he has nobody in his lineup until Sunday. Now, if you got a Thursday night guy, he'll put a Thursday night in. But he is the guy who waits until Sunday at 12:45 to put anybody in his lineup. So that's basically it. If you play in March Madness pools, you don't know what anybody's bracket looks like. If you play in Survivor pools, you don't know anybody's pick. What do you guys make of, I guess we'll rename it now, incognito mode? Should ESPN, Yahoo, NFL.com, should this be a feature in fantasy football leagues going forward? Do incognito your opponent's lineup?
I don't know why it wouldn't matter. I mean,
well, because the reason it does matter is, and I've done this before, is blocking people. So if I don't know that your quarterback's on a bye, or you have a situation where you're like, oh, he's gonna have to pick up a running back, or like someone's questionable, those kind of things, then I'm not going to be able to play defense and pick up guys on the waiver and try to block you in that sense. But I feel like if we want to make it similar to the NFL, you'd have to announce your lineup maybe after waivers. I don't know.
I thought that would just be like I don't know. I would feel like you would be able to see their bench and stuff. I feel like I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, with the way he's saying, like, the guy leaves his lineup blank. I don't think that's you're just being a prick at that point, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But and like you said, you could figure it out. Like, okay, I could do the math on this and this and this. But if Goz was saying, like, in the future we have that you push a dark mode and your lineup goes like your whole team goes black, you can't see it. I think there would be some intrigue in that, and maybe some gamesmanship of trying to like hide what you're planning or what your deficiencies are, so people can't block you on the waiver. But then I think you'd have to do like again, similar to what the NFL does. You have to have an announce your starters or reveal your lineup after waivers, or maybe on Thursday night you have to everything comes back and then you can't hide anymore. I think it'd be interesting though. It's kind of fun.
I definitely see what you're saying. I honestly don't have an opinion, I guess, because it's not often that I look at the other person's lineup to do it. I totally see the point of like blocking. I think that is.
Well, I do that. If I see that someone's quarterback's on a bye and they don't have one on their bench, I'm like, oh, I'll do weeks advance and be like, yep, that guy's a good matchup. I'm going to pick him up and just try to do it that way, where I'm like, I'm going to make sure that this guy doesn't beat me with a pretty good streaming quarterback.
Right.
Yeah, and I guess the other part to add to that, too, is more about defensive matchups. Like, let's say, for instance, you're playing the Broncos, I don't know, and you've got, like, Derek Carr. You know one of those balances, you know what I'm talking about, where, like, if your quarterback is going up against a defense that your opponent also has, you don't get as many points. You guys kind of know what I'm talking about there, where, like, a touchdown would count for 4, but really it counts for 2 because he's playing against his own defense. Some people are able to pick up on that, but sometimes because if you don't stream defenses, you're stuck in that spot. It is what it is. So the other one – I
see that happen because there are, there's not a lot of consistent defenses in the NFL. There's only a handful of ones that you feel good about every week. But it does amaze me when people play a quarterback against their starting defense. It happened in one of my leagues that I played in this past week where he started Justin Herbert against Pittsburgh's defense. I'm like, Herbert put up a massive game, but because of that, Pittsburgh's defense had -4. So like you just screwed yourself. Like you want Herbert to blow up, but because of that, it wasn't as effective. Like his 31-point output was actually only 27, and he technically had a goose egg in his lineup. I don't know. I always just find that very intriguing of like you're almost rooting for yourself to fail. I don't know. But then on the weird side, I kind of think about it as like, oh, it's kind of an insurance policy where if Herbert has a dud, it's because my defense got a couple turnovers and that saves you. I don't know. I find it very intriguing to almost like set yourself up for failure when that happens.
I think I did that to you a couple weeks ago.
You did it when you streamed Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, and that
played the Browns, which it could have worked because Teddy gets sacked a lot, and
that was my thought. It's like, yeah, Teddy might get me, but I needed the 15 points. I was like, that was my baseline, but that Denver defense was giving up sacks, so my thought was the Browns would get 5 points. So it's like it's a net neutral almost in my book. So yeah, I definitely see that point.
Yeah, it would have to be a really unique circumstance where you're either streaming a quarterback or you don't really have a lot of options. Where at this point, all the good defenses are rostered, and it definitely comes down to like for instance, and we're going to talk about streaming defenses coming up, but like I think one of the top defenses on a lot of the waivers is like the Texans, because the Texans defense is going up against the Jets.
Jets. Yeah, you're right. The Jets.
And but the Texans aren't a good defense. So, do I really feel good about that? Like, that could easily be – I know Max White isn't starting right now, but we've seen the Jets blow up for 30-plus points, and then you're like, I don't know. I feel like when you're trying to stream defenses this late in the season, and sometimes the green matchups can be very deceiving, as we talked about before.
Yeah, and one other thing to add to this, too, is that you mentioned the waiver wire and things like that. It's not like you can't look at the waiver wire and be like, oh, I saw so-and-so pick so-and-so up. You can't right. And their roster is not going to change. Like, in difference in comparisons to like survivor pools or things like that, where you can hide it, you really don't know. They've had the same roster for 10 weeks. They've had the same roster for 11 weeks and things like that. My other one is here from @SirBert. No, not you, Rex. @SirBert on Twitter asks this question. He goes, guys, love your podcast, love fantasy football. I know you guys don't talk about wagering that much, but this one is in particular for Chet and Kyle.
Okay.
I was like, all right, I like this one. He goes, okay. He goes, guys, right now I've kept track of my gambling picks over the last 2 years. I'm exactly at 49%, which is incredible. That is sports gambling at its finest. I'm convinced there's only one way to win on betting on sports, and that is preseasons betting on the unders fantasy football-wise. Ooh. In other words, let's say, for instance, you bet on Derrick Henry to have 1,600 yards.
Right.
Well, Derrick Henry's hurt. You've won your bet. What do you guys make as people who don't usually bet on sports but are fantasy football people saying the best way to make money is to bet unders? And a second part of this, am I a bad person for rooting for failure and injuries?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. That's interesting because I think if we kind of run down the list, most of those guys are well under. Most of those top 5 picks would be categorized as under. And that's also including quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes is an under right now. I'm assuming Josh Allen is an under the pace that we expected. But then look through the top 5 picks. Saquon Barkley's under. Derrick Henry got hurt. He was going to be well over. Kamara, CMC got hurt. All those guys you're looking at right now, barring some crazy Christmas miracle touchdown, 6 touchdown game from Kamara, you're hitting on all of them.
That's
crazy.
That is interesting. I love to hate it. I mean, you also think about it this way. I think outside of Derrick Henry, you have a whole offseason and say, okay, this dude blew up. What are defenses going to do to stop them as game plans and everything comes up? And obviously teams get better. And that's interesting. I kind of like the idea a lot. It's a different way of doing it. Just talk about yards, talk about touchdowns. And the only thing that would bite you is if somebody doesn't, or if somebody stays healthy and their team does do what is anticipated. But you're not in a bad spot if you bet the under. I don't hate it. I feel like that is better odds.
Now, I'm gonna pull it up real quick just to see, like, let's just go over like the top 5 in running backs right now. And I'm excluding Henry because he will eventually slide off. It's Taylor, Eckler, Mixon, Harris, and James Conner. Hold on, is that per points? Yes, it is. My God.
So
just quickly off the top of my head, would have been what?
So Elliott,
McCaffrey, Henry, Cook would have been the top 3 guys, and then a few others in that mix. So those guys aren't close to the top 5 right now. Well, they are not in the top 5. We should rephrase that, right?
Right. And they're nowhere near what I'm imagining their end of season over-under was. Unless Vegas is smart, though. Like, I wonder, you wouldn't have to blindly do it. Like, make sure that Vegas isn't accounting for CMC missing a couple games. Like, almost like do the math on what the total is, divide it by 16 or 17 games, and be like, all right, is he going to get this many points per week? And then you'll feel good about it. But this is why I don't gamble, because I think the season-long gambling would kill me, because I'm stressing about it the whole time. You might have already committed Harry Carey with Derrick Henry's start to the season. And so, like, yeah, I think every week I'd be like, oh, man, Henry's going off again. I should have took the over.
Well, I think you referenced 1,600 yards for Henry. I would have 100% taken the over on that, because that's 100 yards a game.
Right.
Shit, how many years in a row has Henry averaged over 100 yards a game?
Seemed like an easy bet. Exactly. Like, these odds, over-unders are usually about a 50-50 payout, and usually most casinos won't let you, like, pair it together. Like, if you try to bet, here's a great example, right? Like, if you go to Rivers, you can't bet all the divisional winners right now because they think it works in your favor as an investor more than it works in their favor. So they won't let you, like, play with those odds. But this is great thinking about it, because when you place the bet, make sure you know who your fantasy roster is made up of first. Because that's, that's such an easy statement, but it's true, because look, if you've got your fantasy roster set, and let's say, for instance, you've got Austin Eckler and Jonathan Taylor, and you don't have Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, whoever, you're going to root against them anyways. If you're playing fantasy football and you're rooting against rushing yards and rushing touchdowns and a reception, you're not rooting for them unless they're on your favorite team. So why not play those unders? Look, you're not going to root for an injury unless you're a terrible person, which we're not going to judge at Sir Bert. But you're going into fantasy, you're rooting against them anyways. What is the harm of playing the unders in those preseason projections? I think it's a really interesting thing to wonder about. And I think I'm probably going to do it next year.
And then this is getting even darker. Maybe you should bet the under against your own fantasy players, because that's a win-win. If my fantasy guy goes over, I might be playing in the championship. If he goes under, I'm getting my money back from losing my entry. You're covering all ends, baby. Prove
that's
me
called
wrong.
The Ultimate Hedge. Might be the name of this podcast. The Ultimate Hedge.
Wow, that's a really, really interesting point.
Yeah, because then, especially for this guy, I might start doing this in all my dynasty. My top 3 picks, all of them are going to get under. They're gonna break their leg week 1. But yeah, so then, like, instead of moaning bitching and moaning all season, it's like, I got a nice little payday coming for me at the end of the season. Let's go.
That's right. We've revolutionized fantasy football now, guys. The ultimate hedges. If your team stinks, you're going to benefit somehow, some way. Stress has been lessened.
Of like, what would be the right amount of bet to make sure you're going to get your money back? There's got to be a way where it's almost like, I mean, you could still, I guess, your guy could ball out and you lose in the playoffs and you lose on both fronts. But at least you have fun.
If you're listening to the podcast, just listen for who's Chet's top 2 or 3 running backs are. Bet the under.
I know. I'm going to start sending apology gifts when I draft these guys. Like, hey, man, make sure you tape up your knees. Like, here's extra padding this year. I'm so sorry. Here's a chocolate.
Valentine's Day, heart-shaped. Let's get into this week's waiver wire. With so many weeks, not so many left, Thanksgiving week is here. Maybe you've got 2. Maybe you've got 3 weeks left. These moves, are you bold enough to stick somebody in your starting lineup to help you reseed, to clinch a playoff spot, to maybe find yourself in the lottery? All that stuff can happen potentially with this week's waiver wire. But before we get there, we want to tell you, we're talking about investing, right? We're talking about wagers and all these other things. Find the right spot to put your money in 2022. That's with our friends over at Northeastern Insurance. Jared Lozier is your guy. If you want to make sure that you're investing, whether it be your business, your home, the things that are the most important in your life, Jared Lozier wants to help you with your finances for the upcoming year. Northeastern Insurance, that's the spot for you. Jared's one of our guys who's been a part of this, big football fan. Oh, by the way, an Indianapolis Colts fan, a Jonathan Taylor fan. He's probably mad we didn't lead off the podcast talking about his team. Well, we did, just not Jared. Jared Lozier, Northeastern Insurance, your guy. For more information on Jared, head over to our YouTube channel where you can see his information on our ticker. Or if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, just hit podcast info, and there's all of Jared's info. Call him, email him, jaredl@nemail.com. Kyle, you gave me a little tease, and Chet as well, about you gave me the old sunglasses emoji about who might be popping up on this week's waiver wire. Who do you have for us?
The interesting part, it's not a someone.
Ooh!
If they are on your waiver wire, spend your fabs. Do what you need to do. Use your waiver one priority and go get the Eagles defense. Me and Chet were talking a little bit about it. Just an FYI, this is their remaining schedule. New York Jets. A bye. You might have some issues there. Then you get into playoff week. The Washington football team. The New York Giants. The Washington football team. That defense has been balling out against bad defenses. Denver throwing up 14, Detroit throwing up a 20, Carolina throwing up a 14, Dallas even threw up an 8, so they got some run there. And all those teams are somewhat run. They need to run the ball because their quarterbacks are doo-doo butter. So I love that Eagles defensive line. They have been impressing the hell out of me all season long. I believe they're one of the best against the rush in the NFL. That is my waiver. That is my waiver pickup for the week. If the Eagles defense, you are going to set yourself up so well going into the playoffs that you're not going to have to worry about moving that defense. That has to be the easiest remaining schedule from a fantasy football perspective that has ever happened for the next 6 weeks. I would even start them on their bye week. So hell, just let it roll. But that is my waiver pickup of the week, because the rest of this waiver wire is a train wreck in my leagues. I don't even want to reach on a lot of these guys. Like Chet hinted at a little bit earlier, the Texans are the #1 projected defense. I ain't touching the Texans with a 10-foot pole to start them in my lineup. I don't care who they're playing. Same with the Bears. Same with the Jags. Not a chance in hell am I starting those teams. So when you look at it, I'm not touching anybody else. Tyrod Taylor's available there, but you saw what he did last week and 2 weeks ago. He didn't do anything. Daniel Jones looked awful. And then you got Carson Wentz going up against Tampa Bay this week. Nah, I'll pass on that one. So I really am only looking at grabbing that Eagles defense, using my waiver priority, and spending my fab there if you have fab.
One thing that I just want to make sure, you said they're playing the Giants this week. They being the Eagles, right?
Yes.
Okay. I think you said Jets. I just wanted to make sure.
Oops.
The Giants twice.
Yeah, they play the Giants.
Right.
They play the Giants this week, then the Jets.
Right. It's funny. One of the more popular guys left on my waiver is going to lead to this point. Remember, beginning of the season, I said I want no part of the New York Jets or the New York Giants.
Yes.
I'm still holding true on the Giants. I don't think there's a single startable player. Because if you have Saquon Barkley, sure, start him. You already missed the playoffs. Like, if you have Saquon Barkley, you're not in it. Elijah Moore. I mean, this guy's being consistent. Goodbye, Corey Davis. Is Corey Davis even playing?
Barely.
I mean, it is the Elijah Moore show through the air. The guy is explosive. I don't know what it is about Ole Miss receivers when they get to the NFL, but they're just dynamic. He's available in a lot of my 10-team leagues. And I'm targeting him, but it's also, like Goz kind of mentioned, like, am I putting him in? Like, am I trusting this every week that Elijah Moore is going to break off a 60-yard touchdown? Or, I mean, he's getting a lot of even goal red zone looks when they're down there, but still, I have to like check myself. I'm like, ooh, like I need this guy now. And I'm like, is he ever going to crack the lineup? Like, am I ever starting him over Adam Thielen or, like those other wide receiver 2s on my team? Maybe. He's the only guy that between the New York teams, the New York Giants and the New York Jets, where I'm like, this guy might have a spot when it comes down to the playoff push.
I mean, when you look at that playoff push schedule, New Orleans, Miami, Jacksonville. I mean, I don't hate it. He's not available in any of my leagues, so I completely skipped over him. But that's not a bad grab. He's there.
Yeah.
It's back to that classic thing about taking a late flyer on draft day on a rookie wide receiver, which you talked about in the preseason, where somebody who has Elijah Moore probably sat on him to like the 18th round and said, maybe I'll just hang on him to the bye weeks. Maybe he'll, and they're cashing in with him right now. They played him through the bye weeks. You're in great shape. And like you just mentioned, the Ole Miss thing, the Turkey Bowl, a Thanksgiving tradition. That's when Elijah Moore got on most people's radar when he did the peeing like a dog in the end zone and cost his team the Egg Bowl with the missed extra point and everything else. Yeah, that's Elijah Moore, if you might have forgot. Speaking about Thanksgiving, I have a theory about Thanksgiving starts and sits. This is going to sound like a very cliche, open-ended start sit here, but I don't think we've ever discussed this topic. There was a stretch here, like I believe closer to 2018, 2019, where if you started the kicker on Thursday Night Football, you were usually in good shape. The kicker on Thursday night, nobody could score. They didn't know the adjusted weeks. And the kickers, whoever it was on Thursday night, ended up being a good catch. Do you guys get any type of influence by these primetime games, and especially Thanksgiving where, you know what, the Bills play the Saints on Thursday night, right? It's a primetime NBC game. They want to see points. That's what I'm looking at. I'm looking like, okay, I know the Bills and the Saints want to put up points. Drew Brees is getting honored, all this stuff. I'm looking to start Bills and Saints offensive players if they're not already in your lineup. The Raiders and Cowboys get the 4:30 window. They both got smacked this past week, and the offense did nothing. Everyone thinks they're going to suck again. No, they want points. Are you guys like me? And I'm just totally influenced by this primetime setup with the Thanksgiving games coming up and the fantasy implications.
Oh, you go first, Kyle, especially since one of those teams is your Buffalo Bills.
I'm not against it by any means. I mean, I feel like I'm really weird. I look at, and especially recently since we've talked a lot about it, like I've been paying a lot more attention to weather and everything like that. I mean, you got some of these games in domes. You got nothing that's going to hurt you. I mean, Saints in a dome, Lions in a dome, Cowboys in the dome. So you're not going to have to worry about weather. Saints secondary, bad. Bills defense looked like crap last week. So I'm probably leaning more towards starting Bills players, but Detroit Lions, stay the hell away. Raiders, Cowboys, how do you not start some of those guys? So the only other thing that I would caution on diving right into starting some of these Thursday night players and these Thanksgiving games is this is such a short week, specifically for the Bears, Lions, like I said, stay away, Raiders, Cowboys. Like this is 3.5 days for some of these teams as they have to start prepping and all this. And I mean, they all lose, by the way.
Not only did they all lose by a combined margin of 72 points, 0-6 and combined on average. Well, average is about 16. Yeah, there you go. 72 points. Or no, not 16, 12. There you go.
So, I mean, when you look at it that way, do the Bills look angry? I'm sure. Are the Saints fighting for a playoff spot? Yeah. I think you're going to get the best out of a lot of these teams. So I'm not hesitating. I'm going all in on probably the Bills. I'm struggling to start Saints unless Alvin Kamara is playing. I think if Alvin Kamara plays, you definitely start some of your Saints guys because it's going to open it up. Trevor Siemian hasn't been terrible. Not great, but not terrible. But then again, if you need Trevor Siemian, you're probably out of the playoff spot. And Cowboys, I mean, I think you got to start Cowboys. The Cowboys offense is way too explosive for what they've done over the last couple weeks. Yeah, start them. Start some of them.
I'm going to talk about the Cowboys in a second, but back to the point we made last week. How true was it, and you saw it firsthand, Kyle, Tyler Bass kicking in bad weather? And it's not just Tyler Bass, but because Tyler Bass is a top 3, top 4 fantasy kicker because he's on a great offense and he's got a great leg. But when he's kicking in a windy, rainy stadium, it's hard for anybody. So
build a dome, Buffalo. Build a dome.
Yeah. Target kickers that play in domes are scheduled to play in domes. I always just feel much better about those elements when they're expected to kick 40, 50-yard field goals. To the Cowboys, I was a little intrigued that you didn't mention, and I know it didn't pan out necessarily this past week, but with no Amari Cooper, again this Thursday, and CeeDee Lamb in concussion protocol, Michael Gallup's probably rostered above 50%. But, Cedric Wilson, another guy where now he had, extra reps last week with the Amari Cooper out. He's probably getting extra reps again as they have a short lead up to this game. He could have had a big game. It was drops. And can he sort that out? Was that just a fluke? Was it just the whole team was just off? They're going to have to throw the ball. And because also Zeke got banged up. So also, that's another side thing. I like Tony Pollard this week as a sneaky play if Zeke's not going to be 100%. But looking at those secondary Dallas catchers, are they going to be able to step up, turn this thing around, and play a good game? I'm a little hesitant on Gallup. I actually like Wilson a little bit more this week.
You're muted.
Still muted.
You
Darn it,
mentioned
Rex.
Zeke right there.
Hey,
I'm back.
hey,
Rex turned it down if you were watching our visual side. Rex actually turned it right down, even though
Oh
I
yeah,
unmuted
blame it on the kid.
I'm in a trade for Zeke, and I'm just kicking myself. I'm in a 2 QB league, and I thought, okay, if I just get Zeke, he's eventually here going to put up a lot of points because his offense is clicking. And I didn't think, oh crap, Mahomes is on a bye week. I'm like, don't worry, I got Goff. Goff got hurt. I'm like, all right, this team might be done. I think it's bad managing at this point where I didn't remember that the Mahomes bye week was coming, and I thought Goff on Thanksgiving would make it till then. That didn't happen. I like Pollard as well. Like those are my 2 starts and sits. Pollard because of all the stuff you just mentioned, and Dawson Knox. I love Dawson Knox for Buffalo this Sunday night. The tight end position, he's been hurt, projected for double digits. I love those 2 plays, Knox and Pollard.
I'm actually big on Beasley this week. I'm still a fan of Diggs. You're starting to see the Bills force the ball to Diggs. So Diggs owners, you might be having Diggs at the right time. But Beasley not being involved in this offense, you're seeing over these last couple of weeks, is the biggest detriment to this offense. Another guy this is a risky play if you are in desperate need of a flex option. Gabriel Davis might be an okay play starting up. He's been getting on the field more and more, actually making some big time plays for the Bills. It's just going to still depend on Allen. So over the last 2 games, he's had 7 targets, caught 5 of them. Against the Jets, 105 yards. Against Indy, obviously everything went wrong. But he's starting to see more of the targets, the snaps. I think in the first week he was at like 13% because Manny Sanders was out there all the time. He's starting to get some more snaps. I think this week he was up to 40. Some of that might have been because of garbage time. But I think they're going to have to throw the ball. There is no run game in Buffalo, and the only way that they are going to run is with Breida. And I don't trust the Bills to start Breida because they love Singletary and they love Moss. So if we got word that Breida was starting for this team, I'd say Breida's a good play. But I really like Gabriel going up against this Saints secondary that they're going to need to sling the ball around in a dome to get this win.
Do they love Singletary?
I hope not.
Yeah. That's one of those.
He continues to get snaps, and I don't understand. And I know Chet's thinking this is way back here, way back in his head. 2 years ago, I said he was going to be a top 10 back. God, has that not worked out?
Oh, boy. I don't have any start sits, but I guess this is back to like a mailbag question. This trade just got accepted in one of my leagues. I know, Kyle, a few weeks ago you said Travis Kelce's untradeable. Guy traded Kelce away for DeAndre Swift and Jamar Chase.
Oh, God, yes, please.
Right?
110.
Goz is wincing a little bit.
I guess I think Jamar Chase and Kelce are going to be pretty even. I wonder where DeAndre Swift, whoever did that trade, Swift got the perfect game because there have been times we've talked about him a bunch where he's sucked, terrible, burst. Maybe that's it though. Like Detroit's going to be so bad for the rest of the season, he's just going to get you points. So I like it. Swift's going to get you points. I'm also very big into the Mahomes. I've convinced myself Mahomes and Kelce are going to win hopefully, championships because of that race in the AFC West. I get it though. If I can get Jamar Chase and DeAndre Swift, and I got a decent tight end on my bench, of course you got to make that move. Yeah.
Can we also talk about the remaining schedule for Swift? Talk about run friendly. Chicago, Minnesota, tough game against Denver. Atlanta's who've been mediocre, or Arizona who's been mediocre. Then you've got Atlanta and Seattle. I mean, that's a solid schedule for an offense that's sketchy. That DeAndre Swift should see the ball 30 times. He's going to get you 15 to 20 points every day.
He just keeps pulling off these slow. I mean, he had that one great start against the Rams where he had the 80-yard touchdown. But it feels like it's like you're yelling at him at your TV screen, and then in the third quarter he breaks off a 60-yard bomb, and you're like, that's my guy.
Yep.
But there have been a couple instances where it didn't happen, and he gets you 4 or 5, and you're just like, oh, well, this team sucks so bad. Who is it going to be? It's Boyle versus Dalton on Thursday.
Sorry.
Oh,
David, blah. There's a quarterback named Blah out there. How's Boyle in the NFL? Is he like? I wish one day somebody make a list of the top 5 worst quarterbacks ever to play in the NFL. He has to be on the list. The fact that he's even on a roster when you go back and look at his stats at UConn is hysterical.
Are we talking about Blah or Boyle?
Boyle.
Okay.
It's a remarkable he's even in the NFL.
Peterman's got to be one, right?
Yeah.
Who?
Peterman.
Oh,
It's not necessarily like, I mean, like you could make the argument that he's had the tools, but just in terms of actual on-field, Peterman's got to be number 1 all time.
Up there too.
Are we saying just like the criteria started a game?
I think the combination is how bad the performances were and what skill set got them to that point. Like 2 other ones I think of. There's a guy named Ryan Lindsley, if you guys remember him from the Cardinals a few years ago. And there's another one named Todd Collins. I know Todd Collins one time got the start for Washington. Our pal Gardner Royce, probably knows, posted a -6 for me. I'm like, no, this is his moment. No. Those guys are like the first 4 that immediately, but I would go Peterman as well because of the stats. And
well, so if we're just saying NFL start gets you into this conversation, how about that Denver starter when they had the COVID outbreak?
Oh yeah, Hinton, right?
Hinton.
Like that. Yeah.
That might be the worst we've ever seen in a professional game ever.
Oh, for sure.
It's not his fault, but God, was that bad. Then we tried to convince ourselves, like, I mean, he's gonna run a lot, like he's gonna
flex position, right?
No, it was so bad.
I don't know. That Peterman start was awful.
5 picks or 4?
I think it was 6.
Yeah. And also, how about he's immediately cut right when John Gruden's fired? They're like, "You look, Gruden wanted you. Yeah, you're out. Just go. You should have packed up when you saw the emails."
Is Peterman like still hanging out with Gruden? Has he brought him on as an assistant? Like, it's like Peterman. I'm not a coach anymore, but come with me. It's like when he makes his speech like Jerry Maguire. Who's coming with me? Peterman's like, I'm coming. You believe in me.
Peterman is the Lloyd and Entourage with Ari. He's walking right out with them. That's exactly right. Thanksgiving. Somebody listening to this might be driving back to their homes or visiting their family or friends for Thanksgiving. We've got some differing opinions here on the wonderful holiday that is Thanksgiving. I'm heading back to Central New York. I'm excited. I enjoyed Thanksgiving. Kyle, I'm going to start with you and then move to Chet. It seems as if you may not be a huge fan of the Turkey Day.
Never have been. I love my family dearly. Can't stand them for more than 8 hours, though. Let me tell you what. Just not for me. I'm not the biggest turkey fan. Thanksgivings that don't have mac and cheese, which were all of mine, are garbage. Get them out of here.
That's why you're coming to our house on Thursday.
Can't make some money mac and cheese. But then the worst part. So the mac and cheese I can get over it. But then when I'm gonna swear, when you fuck with the stuffing, get out. You put celery and apples and raisins in that, nah. Cut it out. Get out of my life. And then you make these mashed potatoes that are just chunky blobs of not cooked enough potatoes. There's no cream. There's no garlic. It's just a damn potato. Nah, my Thanksgiving sucked. I'm out.
I want to give him a hug.
Happy Thanksgiving. Man. Chet, I don't know if there's a better way to close it than that. I'm just assuming you enjoy Thanksgiving. Keep up the great coverage at CBS and enjoy dark mode.
Go Turkey Day.